And a pleasant good evening, everyone. Welcome to The Works. I'm your host, Keith Williams, and we are continuing our coverage of the 2022 primary elections, which will be coming up in about 10 days, a little bit, maybe like 9 days.
9 days now, yes.
9 days. Yes, sir. And we have with us today Mr. Dean. Is it Odling?
It's Odel, like Yodel.
Odel, Dean
Yeah.
Odel. And he is seeking the Republican nomination for governor for the state of Alabama. And sir, thank you so much for being on today.
Well,
I had a
thank you for having me. Yeah.
day, but nevertheless, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. So just let everyone know who you are and why you're running.
Well, I am a pastor here in Opelika, Alabama. I've been a minister of the gospel for 35 years, started in 1987. But I pastor Fire and Grace Church here in Opelika that I started from scratch, from nothing, in 2009, January 2009. So we just celebrated our 13th anniversary. I've authored 4 books, been a researcher, an educator, and just pastor, minister, traveled to Nigeria and preached several times, to the island of Mauritius, to the Middle East. So been around a little bit, planted churches in other parts of the country, Washington, D.C., Georgia, Alabama. But one of the main reasons I'm running is not because I need another job. We started ministry school in 2018, so I'm a pretty busy guy. But, when I saw how our current governor handled the coronavirus pandemic, and she just kind of arbitrarily shut down businesses and churches and schools, didn't really have the authority to do so, and violated the Constitution, the First Amendment of the Constitution, especially when she shut down churches. That was just, that was a bridge too far. And so I didn't shut down our church. And then, of course, because I'm a researcher and I do not trust the government institutions like the NIH and CDC and the FDA and all the rest of the alphabet soup, I knew to look to true scientists and doctors who are willing to risk their careers and their licenses and everything to tell us the truth. And so I started researching very early on the pandemic, because I had a very large following online. I had 24,000 subscribers on YouTube. We'd have 50 to 100,000 views a month. So I knew I had a responsibility to give the people that were listening to me the truth and to try to protect them from lies and protect their lives. So I started researching and discovered Dr. Didier Raoul of France, who's the top infectious disease doctor in the world. In February 2020, he was treating patients with the hydroxychloroquine protocol, which includes zinc and azithromycin as an antibiotic and some other things. And he treated 1,061 patients during that time who were critical with COVID-19, and he only lost 8 out of 1,061 patients. He published his study and his research and his facts. And of course, that began to spread across the world. Top cardiologists like Dr. Peter McCullough, Texas A&M, Baylor University Medical Center, formerly, but now he's the top published cardiologist in the world, began to also push this early treatment protocol. Dr. Harvey Risch of Yale, Dr. George Fareed, Harvard graduate, Dr. Pierre Corey. So those are doctors across the world that started pushing the hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin protocols to save lives. And I saw it saved my life. I wouldn't be talking to you if I hadn't had it. I was at the point of death with coronavirus. So I got the ivermectin protocol, saved my life. But anyway, I was very upset in February 2020, March 2020, April 2020, as we get into all that I never heard Governor Kay Ivey, our state health director, Scott Harris, or our lieutenant governor, or any of our leaders say, hey, people are dying. Alabamians were dying in the thousands. We have a treatment that's working. Why aren't we using it? And very safe drugs, ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, 2 of the safest medications that exist. So anyway, that is why I was upset with our leaders, that they, number one, violated our Constitution, our freedom, and they did not push the early treatment protocols that would have saved thousands. In fact, Dr. Peter McCullough, top cardiologist in the world, one of the top anyway, testified under oath to the Texas State Senate Health Committee. He said, had our leaders, our state health directors, our governors, our hospitals pushed those early treatments early in the pandemic, we could have saved 85% of the people who died. So to me, it was just, we have horrible leadership in Alabama. We're last in everything. And then, we have 20,000, almost now 20,000 reasons why we should not vote for Governor Kay Ivey, and they all have tombstones. So that's what I'm upset about. And then, of course, being last in education, being last, our prisons are in a disaster. We just have a lot of problems, and Kay Ivey's had 5 years to fix them, and she hasn't fixed them. And I said, I'm not a politician. I never thought I'd get into politics, but I am a leader. I look at problems very logically and pragmatically, and here's a problem, and let's find a way to solve it instead of kicking the can down the road and playing politics. So that's why I'm running for governor of Alabama.
So let's what are some of the issues that you are campaigning on that is dear to your heart?
Well, number one, the whole theme of my campaign, if you see my signs or anything, you'll see where it says, keep Alabama free. And I am just a big freedom proponent that where there's, the Bible says where there's the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. And America's always been about liberty. Of course, we haven't always lived up to our ideals, but that's where we should always be pressing for. So I'm a big health freedom advocate. For instance, I'm not for vaccine mandates. I think that should be everybody's free choice. No one should be forced or coerced or pushed or threatened to get a vaccine at the threat of losing their job or not being able to travel or not being able to go to school. I think that should be health choices should be our free choice. And especially when we have vaccines that are dangerous, that can injure you and kill you, it should be your choice to take that risk. I was for the bill that Representative Richie Horton put forth to stop the vaccine mandates at HB 31. I lobbied hard for that. That would have stopped employers from being able to fire people over their vaccine status. So that's a big deal to me. And SB 312 that just died in the last session would have allowed doctors to prescribe hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, budesonide, some of these early treatment protocols without the threat or possibility of losing their licenses and their careers. So I would be a big health freedom advocate. I would revive those bills and push those forth. Secondly, I think education is the second biggest problem we have for sure, or maybe even one of the biggest, because we're ranked 47th overall. We're 52nd in math. Our legislators and our governor thinks that throw a little more money at the problem and that fixes it, but we've increased the budget 400% over the last 10 years. And we've steadily gone downhill to the bottom. And she's had, of course, Governor Kay Ivey's had 5 years to address this, try to fix this problem. We've just gotten worse under her leadership. My plan is to implement a complete school voucher, total, no strings attached school voucher program to really set the schools free from the state and basically let the free market come in. And what's going to happen is parents that are trapped because of their zip code, they have children trapped in bad schools, are going to be able to take their voucher and choose a better school around them and take their children to that. Florida did this. Florida was ranked 29th in K through 12 education in 2017. They did two things, and I'm going to do these two things, but probably even further. They came in, they got rid of the Common Core curriculum that is a disaster in math and reading. That has to be eliminated. And then the second thing that Florida did in 2017 was they greatly expanded their school choice programs to include 56% of their state eligible. Well, Florida went in just 4 years, from 2017 to 2021, they went from ranked 29th in K through 12 education to ranked 3rd in the country. I think we can do that here in Alabama, and I think we can even do better. And so I want to take it even further, and I think we can make some real changes. I've got a plan on I got it mapped out. In fact, I'm the only candidate for governor that actually has a plan listed. Here's what I want to do, A, B, C, and D, on my website, deanodelforgovernor.com, about education. The other thing is that we have a problem with, federal overreach and problems. And, Alabama's blessed with an abundance of oil and natural gas. And here's the beautiful thing about it, where I believe God has blessed us, is that a lot of it, the oil and natural gas, is in the poorest part of our state, in the western part of our state. Well, there are towns there drying up, no jobs. People are saying Montgomery and our leaders there have forgotten us. What are you going to do for us? Well, what I want to do is that, get back to the 10th Amendment, get back to the understanding the authority that states have. We're not subject to the federal government. They don't have unlimited power to tell us what to do. In fact, most of their laws and regulations from the federal government are unconstitutional. They violate the 10th Amendment. And as governor, I want to get back to the 10th Amendment and the doctrine of nullification put forth by Madison and Jefferson, basically that enshrines states' rights. And see, the 10th Amendment is clear. Anything not specifically written in the Constitution as a power delegated to the federal government is relegated to the state. So anytime the federal government oversteps those boundaries and just decides to do something that it's not specifically written that they can do, then we have a problem. And it's up to the states to say no, and it's really up to the governors to say no. And I'm going to do that when it comes to drilling for our oil and natural gas, and particularly in the western side of our state. We bless the Mobile area, all of that area. You want to talk about our state will prosper, we'll bring jobs here, we'll become more energy independent. We won't be suffering if there's a, pipeline hack, or if we have, God forbid, that China decides to invade Taiwan and we have a greater expansion of war and disruption in the world and the supply chain. Alabama's got to become more self-sufficient, both in food security, energy security, and even pharmaceutical security, even when it comes to antibiotics. So we have a plan. I'm calling it the Joseph Project, to get Alabama prepared for some rough days ahead and get us where we can prosper without having to depend on federal handouts from the federal government, where they always have strings attached to those things. So those are some areas I'm different than my opponents, because you can't just complain about the problem. You got to have a solution to problems. So I've got some solutions that we've seen work in other states tremendously, and I think they'll work here in Alabama.
What are your plans to address healthcare? We know that in rural parts of Alabama, lots of hospitals have closed.
Mm-hmm.
And there has been tremendous pressure to Governor Ivey to expand Medicaid, or to fix the healthcare crisis in the state of Alabama. So what are your thoughts on healthcare here in the state of Alabama?
Right. I have been looking at that. Now, of course, with the Republican Party, this is not a popular topic. They've resisted the expansion of Medicaid because they see it as expanding another federal program. But the problem is that we're stuck right now with the system that we have. And there is a gap between, there's people that make too much money to get on Medicaid, right? But they don't make enough to really buy the health insurance that's so expensive. So I am looking at that. And of course, we would just have to look at the budget. But I will say this, the closing of rural hospitals has been a concern of mine from day one on this campaign. And I think we have to find a way to fund it in the budget to start helping these rural hospitals stay open. And to me, if we're going to spend money, we got a lot of politicians in Montgomery that want to spend money on casinos and all this other foolishness that they want to do. They even talked about using $200 million of the COVID relief money to build them a new state house, so they have new thrones to sit on. And I just said, that's ridiculous. We could take that $200 million and we could shore up our rural hospitals that are we've lost about 8, and I think there's 65 in danger of closing. And I believe we need to take some of this money, especially we've got a 1.3 to $1.5 billion surplus right now. We could take some of that money and actually stop the closing of these hospitals. And to me, that would be a priority. I'm not a big, I'm not for the expansion of government and government being the answer to everything. But when you have people suffering and dying, I think, and the state can do something about that. I think we should. So I'm open to the expansion, the possible expansion of Medicaid, but I think there's some other things we need to do. And we need to also make it available, like when we fix this rural hospital problem, also including our veterans in that, where they can go to these places. So I would guess you would say I'm not in line with the hardline Republican Party on that issue, even though I'm running as a Republican. I see that as an important issue that we need to, we need to help the poorest people in our state if we can.
You mentioned something about the lottery, that um, the majority of the people who are in Alabama, I don't know if you're aware of this, they are for a lottery that funds education. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, but again, here's the thing on the lottery. The Alabama state constitution basically is a law against it, right? So you have to amend the constitution. To do that, the legislature would have to pass a lottery bill. The governor really wouldn't have much say in the matter, because once they pass that legislation to amend the constitution, it has to go to a vote of the people. The people have to vote on it. The state of Alabama voted on a lottery in 1999, I guess it was, somewhere in that time period. That was what Governor Siegelman ran his entire campaign on, and he got a vote. He got a bill passed, and the people voted on it. It got voted down. Now, right now, it could be passed. It could get voted and passed. But the governor, again, whoever's governor, will not have much say in that. Now, personally, I don't really believe that lottery is the answer to education. I believe changing the whole system. Again, if your mentality is we need to throw more money at education, that will fix the problem, that's not the idea. That's not correct, because there are other states that spend less in education per child than we do here in Alabama, and they are ranked much higher than us. I think it has to do with the system. It has to do with the curriculum, the system, the discipline, just again, the free market competition. So I'm not big about a lottery for education, because it worked for a while in Georgia, but now it's not working. And same thing in Arkansas. Lotteries tend to work in the beginning, and then the revenue begins to fall off, and then politicians begin to figure out that that's another little cookie jar they can dip their hands in and get their money from, and they begin to fail or just barely break even. To me, I don't see that as a long-term sustainable thing. Plus, we know that gambling does produce and creates people. It preys on people who have a get-rich-quick idea, or even your poorer communities, and it can become addictive. And that I just personally don't believe the state should be in the marijuana business, or the drug business, or the alcohol business, or the gambling business. The state should not be in that, because those are things that can destroy families, destroy lives, and they're what's traditionally called vices. And I just don't think the state should be promoting and advertising for things. They when they were going to push this gambling bill, it was also automatically pushing an addiction hotline and addiction counseling. And they knew that the social fallout of increased gambling in the state is it's terrible cost to the state and to the community, to try to just deal with the fallout of addiction and just other problems with it. So I'm not for lotteries or gambling. I just don't think we need that to prosper in Alabama, especially when we are so blessed with oil and natural gas. And also we're blessed with many rivers. And there's I'm working with a guy who was a former Trump advisor at the White House. He's just an energy expert. And with our rivers here, he has a patent on new hydroelectric non-dam technology. It's very environmentally friendly. We can change the game with energy here in the state of Alabama with just a few little things. And that's where I think we need to prosper. That's what you talk about, long-term prosperity. And if you have long-term prosperity, then you can pay for things like rural hospitals and your education plan and so on down the road. I think we just have the wrong idea. I just don't believe gambling and lotteries are the answer to the money problem.
Well, let's talk a little bit about economic development in the state of Alabama. How would you bring economic development, economic stability, and, as you mentioned, prosperity to the state of Alabama?
Well, and
And
that's what
that also includes bringing in um, bringing in new industries and new jobs.
Well, here's the thing. What our mentality over the last several governors has been basically to give massive tax incentives to attract new businesses. That's in new industry. That's what they do. Or like Senator Shelby has done over the years, basically get us government contractors here or things for us for basically federal government stuff. Again, all that's fine and dandy, but it's not long-term sustainable growth. And two, like for instance, the Golden Dragon um, copper piping place, pretty much owned by the Chinese, right? They gave them this huge tax incentive to the, they're still not paying taxes. They've been here about 10 years. They don't pay taxes for another 15 or 20 years. We spent $20 million building them roads around there, gave them cash. They haven't benefited Alabama. They've provided about 200 jobs, and most of those jobs end up going to their people that come over here. So what happened was that Bentley and Governor Ivey, she was lieutenant governor then, they got a photo op. They got to say, oh, we brought industry and jobs to Alabama, but it really hadn't benefited us at all. And that kind of thing's got to stop. And that's why I say to really prosper and to attract businesses here, you need something booming. And when you do oil and natural gas, when you're drilling and you're drilling for the oil and natural gas and it's coming up out of the ground, the areas around there just come to life. You want to talk about prosperity. Hotels move in, restaurants move in, towns, but they go from little towns to cities. This has happened in Arkansas. It's happened in the Dakotas. It's happened in Alaska. It's happened in even up in Canada where they're drilling for their oil. To me, that's huge. Also, if we become an energy producer, for instance, me talking about this on the campaign trail about going after the oil and natural gas, I'm already getting contacted by CEOs of oil companies from other states that say, hey, you're governor and you want to do this. We want to do business in Alabama. So they're talking about coming here and building refineries and having their companies here. Let me tell you, that creates jobs. Also, what I was talking about earlier, the new hydroelectric technology on our rivers that are clean energy and safe, and you don't have to build dams. And we can take like the cost of energy, electricity from like on the rivers, like 6 cents per kilowatt hour down to 2 cents. Huge companies that have huge need for electricity, like big data centers and stuff like that, are going to want to come here because we're going to have cheaper energy. So across the board, I think the energy plan that I have will affect every type of industry, and it'll draw people here, not because we're offering massive tax cuts and tax incentives, but they want to come here because we're prospering and because energy's cheaper. And I think that's the way to go about it.
Now, I'm quite sure that you have seen a lot of the ads from your opponents in
Yes.
the Republican Party. And I have to say that, and I'm just going to be real, that they're absolutely ridiculous. Uh, really no substance and no plan to help Alabamians because of lack of, let's be real. There are a lot of Alabamians, they are struggling. For example, there are over 800,000 people that um, are at or below the poverty line.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree.
You have Alabama has one of the highest unemployment rates in the nation, on average. I can go on with 47th in education. We also have an issue to where $400 million of the American Rescue Care Act money is going towards prisons, along with the $125 million that came out of the general fund that's going to go towards prisons. And that is a real big concern of mine because I've been following the Department of Justice complaint against the prison system, you know, and what I discovered is that it's not a structural issue. It's not the buildings themselves that's the problem. It's the problem lies is the operations of the prisons, how they're being operated,
Mhm.
and the way that the prisoners are being treated.
Right.
Um, and again, that is a major issue here. When Governor Bentley was in office, they had the money to actually do some improvements and upgrades to our prisons, but that money was swindled,
Mhm. I agree
which is
with it. Let me say this to you real quick in this discussion with you. I
uh,
agree with you that we have had, okay, there was a season where the Democrats had run the state and we had serious problems. Then it switched over and the Republicans started running the state and we got the same problems. Um, and the problem right now is what I call your Rhino Republicans. And we it's our nickname for them, is that they're Republican in name only, meaning they don't really hold true conservative principles that would cause us to prosper and to deal with these problems you're talking about. They play games. They play games for money. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I agree with you 100%. The Republican Party that's in power now, what we call the establishment, is completely corrupt. And the Democrats are just as corrupt. And that's why it's going to take a whole new type of people to come up and start saying, look, it's not about party. I'm going to tell you right now, it's really becoming about just good and evil. And it's about people that are going to be honest and try to do the right thing versus people that are constantly going to Montgomery because they'll tell us they're going to go there to help us, but then they go there and they do whatever benefits them and prospers them, and they start taking money from whether it be the BCA or the AMA or the different entities to do what they want. And so I agree with you 100%. We have a serious problem. It's got to change. They squander all kind of things. One of the things that I was upset about, for instance, Governor Bentley, Governor Ivey, they let this guy Dunn, who ran the prisons all these years and who ran them into the ground, they just kept letting them stay. When you have a prison system that's being mismanaged as bad as ours, and there's been one guy there who's mismanaged it as the head of it, and you don't fire him, something is wrong. And now I've heard recently that either he quit or he resigned or fired or whatever. I don't know what happened. So
that
he's
Charles Gradit.
what's that?
Charles, is it Charles? Charles Gradit.
There's a new. They've got somebody new now, but
I think
Dunn
it's,
was there for years. And you know what?
I
Some of
think
the
think it's Cam. I think it's Cam Ward, if I'm not
Cam
mistaken.
Ward, I thought he
Yeah.
was over pardon and paroles.
Yeah, that might be a pardon and parole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But I'm
I
not
don't
sure
know anything much about him, but yeah, even that area's got to be reformed and fixed. The poison
being
paroles. Yeah.
so and if you are governor, if you were elected governor, how would you handle Alabama's prison system?
Well, what we're going to have to do and see, like, for instance, there would have to be some actually undercover investigations that would have to start because you got to find out who's corrupt. We've got corrupt wardens, we've got corrupt prison guards, we've got gangs running different prisons, making them dangerous. We got a lot of stuff going on, and what gets me is running, campaigning. People come up to me and they go, I'm a correctional officer, or I'm this, or I'm that, and this. Here's what's really going on. You start finding out things. What's amazing is the information about what's really going on is out there, and but nobody does anything about it. So one of the first things I would do is there would have to be some undercover investigations to find out who we have that has integrity, wardens and correctional officers that have integrity, and the ones we find out that don't, that are breaking the law or allowing things to go on that shouldn't go on in these prisons or mismanaging them, we would have to begin to weed them out and then to vet people a whole lot better, vet wardens, correctional officers, and so on down the line. We'd have to go through a process of finding people who have much better integrity and who are much better than what we have now. That's the only way. because it's really the prison system, the wardens and the correctional officers. If they don't have a strong moral base and have integrity, they're going to be corrupt. They're just going to do things, and that's the issue in the prison. I mean, you're always going to have criminals. You're going to have violent criminals. You're going to have people who are tough to deal with in prisons. That's just the way it is. I used to go in prisons and preach regularly. Tutwiler, Ventress, Kilby. I've been to Bullitt County. I used to preach in prisons around the state. And so I know that, like you're saying, I agree that it's not just, there's some problems in some of the buildings. I mean, Tutwiler is very old. And there's issues there, and there's security issues because of some of the facilities, but that's not the biggest problem. I mean, Ventress, for instance, I used to go in Ventress once a month down near Clio, and Ventress is state of the art. I mean, it's very new and very, it's set up in a more modern way, and so it's more secure. But still, again, management all comes down to people and the type of people you have. And we were just going to have to do a better job at finding good people and vetting them to put them in the prison system.
Now, what will your administration would be like? Tell us about your administration as governor.
Well,
Number two, what would you do in your first 100 days as governor?
well, the stuff I'm talking about, we would start immediately. We'd start dealing with, number one, the health freedom issues, some of the federal overreach when it comes to that. We would start dealing with the education system. We begin to write and implement the bills in the first session to produce true school choice, and start dealing with that issue. And then, of course, we would start on the prisons immediately. Like I said, investigations. One of the biggest things that I'm going to do, and they know, and they're terrified of me. I'm going to tell you, both sides, Democrats and Republicans, are terrified of me becoming governor. And I'm telling you, we're doing quite well. And they're scared because they know I'm not, first of all, my donors, I have all individual donors. Nobody's given me over, I think the biggest donation I've had is 14,000. I've had a couple of 10,000, 5,000, but the rest of them I average donation is $174 from individuals. I have no PACs giving me money, no businesses. Nobody owns me, and they know they can't buy me, and they know they can't bribe me, and they know they can't scare me. I've been threatened already too. I don't care about all that. I want to do what's right. And so one of the, I guess you would say, a main theme that's going to be of a Dean Odel administration as governor is investigations to root out corruption in every government agency, because we have had decades now of systematic corruption, money, good old boy system, money getting passed around. I mean, even the ethics commission is there's big problems there. So there's going to have to be some cleaning of house, and I'm going to do it, and they know I'm going to do it. So that would be a big issue. But I'm going to work on this thing, just like you said. To me, the rural hospitals, that's a big deal. The possible expansion of Medicaid, using our surplus, our $1.5 billion surplus, to actually do some things that are going to help us get out of the hole with these problems. I'm not a traditional, I'm not a politician. So I don't have any games that I want to go play. I actually want to go and fix these issues. I have, again, like I said, I'm just a pragmatic person, very logical person, but I'm a very stubborn and determined person. And that means I'm going to go and say, here's the problem, and we're going to fix it. And it's going to get fixed, and we're going to start trying to fix it immediately, because who knows? If I win, I may only have 4 years, and I may not get reelected. I don't care about that. That's not going to be my goal. My goal is going to be, let's fix these problems. Let's start on them. And you know what? I think if people see that, they see we're working on hard. I'm not talking about just talking about it, but they see us trying to fix all these problems you and I have been talking about. I probably win re-election easily, but I'm not saying how long it's going to take to fix them, but I know we'll get started immediately on all of them.
What do you know about the gas tax and the grocery tax?
Well, those are to me that they're ridiculous. First of all, because they weren't needed. Um, and as a true conservative and fiscal conservative, I'm not about raising taxes. And look way back, John F. Kennedy, Democrat, lowered taxes across the board. Economy booms, revenues to the government increase. Ronald Reagan comes in a couple of decades later. He does the same thing the Democrat did, lower taxes across the board. What happens? Economy booms and more revenue comes into the government because there's more business going on. Trump did the same thing, lowered taxes across the board, economy booms. Biden comes in, he undoes everything that Trump did. And we got now $4 gasoline, hyperinflation. Biden did away with Trump's tax cuts. So there's an economic principle. You cut taxes, people have more money in their pocket. They spend that money, it generates, it helps the economy, because if you got more money in your pocket and you need a new dryer, you're going to go out and buy a new dryer, a new washing machine, whatever. That's going to help the economy. The taxes from all that's going to come into the government. You have to stir economic activity. So that's one of the areas I'm about, lowering taxes. And I believe we can get rid of the grocery tax and the gas tax. And one of the taxes I really want to get rid of is the property tax. To me, that's one of the most unconstitutional taxes there are. And you say, well, okay, you get rid of these taxes, you lower taxes, how do you pay for things? Well, that's what I'm talking about. The oil, natural gas, the new hydroelectric technology on our rivers. You do those things, you're going to see the finances come in that you need. And also, again, you lower taxes, people have more money. They're going to go spend it on a new car or whatever. Boom, you stimulate growth in the economy. So, there's states like Pennsylvania that don't have a grocery tax, yet Alabama does. And to me, that's a tax that really affects lower income people the most, because that means they're going to be spending a higher amount or higher percentage of their income on food. And it'll help our lower income families the most to get rid of the grocery tax. So that those will be gone. We will get rid of them.
On the campaign trail, I know you've been all over the state of Alabama. What are some of the issues that people are bringing to your attention?
A lot of it, the things that you brought up. I mean, I hear that all these things a lot about Medicaid expansion, the rural hospitals. People always ask about casinos and gambling, where I stand on that. Of course, now the abortion issue is coming up now, because it looks like that the Supreme Court, looks like it. We'll see if they do it or not, but I know that they're going to do what they should have done a long time ago with put the abortion issue back to the states, which is a constitutional thing to do. It's really not a federal thing, it's a state thing. But those issues come up. Of course, the most thing I hear is that people tell me, and they've been telling me for 2 years, all over the state, I'm not voting for Kay Ivey. And so I think people are wanting to change. They're wanting new leadership, and people don't want to be forced to take the vaccine. They don't want to lose their jobs over it or not be able to go to school. They want to be able to make that choice on their own. So I hear that a lot. I hear a lot, like I said, people are excited about the idea of really Alabama becoming a little Saudi Arabia and really drilling for our oil and natural gas and getting that. People want tax relief. They want lower taxes. So, all the things that we've been talking about, I hear from people every day. I mean, I get questions every day. I mean, like I just got home tonight. Yeah, I mean, I left yesterday at I got up at 4:30 in the morning, left at 6, did a big meeting in Vestavia Hills in Birmingham, big forum where there were 3 of the candidates for governor, and we answered questions from people and talked to a big group of people. Then I went all the way up to Gunnersville, big event there. We gave a speech, talked to people, came out. We had several hundred people come out of the community asking questions. And then I left there and went to another meeting that night. Then had one today south of Birmingham in Bibb County, and then just got home. I mean, so that's, I leave tomorrow for Tuscaloosa, then I go to Choctaw County, then I go to Troy, then I go back to Birmingham. I'll make a big circle. So Definitely hearing from the people.
So will you be willing to work with politicians from from other parties in order to um, push your agenda should you be elected governor?
Oh yeah, and I think I've looked at what some of the Democrats want to do. Like, it's funny because a lot of the things I think that are important to the Democrat side of our state, I'm probably the one out of my fellow opponents here in the Republican Party. I'm probably the one that they're going to find would work with them the most and work together on some of these issues. Like my opponents, they don't talk about the possibility. It's not even on the table to possibly expand Medicaid or to work on the rural hospital situation. This is something I talk about. Now, that's not popular in the hardline Republican Party, but I don't care. To me, it's the right thing to do. So in that area, I can see that the Democrat side of the legislature would definitely love to sit down with me as governor and see what we can work out together. So I would love to, there's certain principles that I have, I won't compromise, but there's certain areas where we got to sit down and go, we have a problem here. People are suffering and dying, and we need to fix it quick if we can.
And I must say that this is not the talk of a traditional Republican that's running. I mean, I saw all of the ads on TV and through social media, and just make me want to vomit. Nothing concrete they are saying that's going to help Alabamians across the board, and it's just sickening.
Oh, I
Uh,
agree. I agree.
it's just sickening that it's just sickening that and I understand the Republican Party is not what it used to be.
No.
I remember I remember in times of Reagan, and Bush, when Bush was president, the father and the son, that you actually had um individuals they were strongly conservative, but they was willing to sit with anybody and say, hey, we got an issue, let's work together, let's come together, let's compromise, and still be able to say, okay, I have these conservative values, that I can't compromise on, or I have these liberal ish, or I have these liberal principles, that I live by, but
Mhm.
they're able to come together and find some type of common ground. Can we see that in your administration?
Well, yeah, like I said, especially in the healthcare issue, I think that they will see that the Democrat side will see that I'm somebody that we can work with. Because with me, it's about just like with the coronavirus issue and vaccines and all this. The vaccine killed my sister. Now I know people have taken the vaccine and they've been fine, but this is why it needs to be a choice because all people are not going to react the same. But my sister took the COVID vaccine, told her not to, and she had a massive stroke and heart attack. Um, but that's just an issue like that. I was saying is like we can sit down and go, hey, that should be your choice. That should be a freedom issue. Um, but I would definitely look. I would definitely sit down the healthcare issue. I think we could sit down and talk about the rural hospital issue. We could sit down prison reform. Here's an area too where I'm different. Um, I don't believe I don't want to legalize marijuana, but I don't think anybody should be in prison over marijuana. And I think it needs to be kind of decriminalized and put down to basically a traffic ticket. I believe we still need to regulate it and we still need to have laws about it because people can take marijuana and lace it with other things, and that can be very dangerous. So I'm not for total legalization of marijuana, but I think there's people in jail that should not be in jail. And and so that's again an area where we can look at some prison reform issues, get some people out of prison that shouldn't be there. If they're nonviolent and they're in there over marijuana possession, they need to be out of jail. It's just to me, it's ridiculous. Now you won't hear a Republican talk about that right there. Most
So,
Republicans
so
won't go down that road.
So
What's
one
it?
one of the things that your opponents had talked about was election security.
Mhm.
And to my knowledge, there has been no evidence.
Uh, well, you ought to watch. There's a documentary that just came out by Dinesh D'Souza, but it wasn't just him. It was uh, a bunch of groups that did. Basically, they did the geo tracking, which is used by the FBI and other law enforcement agencies to track where people were. There's definitely been evidence. I've seen the evidence myself. There's a lot of election fraud that goes on in Alabama and has been for many years that goes on. And the election of 2020, and I will say we may not agree on this, but I saw the ballot stuffers. I saw the videos. I saw the ballots that were being, I mean, and this was early on. I saw ballots in Georgia. They were running through counting machines, pulling them back the other end and counting them again. There's been some serious stuff go on that needs to be fixed, but this is not really, it's not a new problem. There's been states that have been notorious for election fraud and voter fraud. Pennsylvania being one, Illinois. There's been states that have just, and again, we have it here in Alabama. There's stuff that goes on here. For instance, I mean, 2018 election, I know people in the polling areas that saw machines, voting machines rolled out which is illegal, come back in with the number of votes needed for a certain candidate to win and beat another candidate. That kind of stuff goes on. Look, here's all you have to know. As long as you have human beings involved in counting the votes, whether they're using a machine or they're using paper ballots, there can be cheating and there can be fraud. So to act like there's none or there hasn't been enough to overturn election is simply not true. Georgia, for instance, President Trump only lost Georgia by 11,000 votes. There was enough fraud in Georgia to have affected the outcome of Georgia, also Arizona, also Pennsylvania. Plus, there were people in Pennsylvania, like the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania, changed the voting laws and allowed certain things to go on that she didn't even have the authority to do, that would have to have been a law passed by the legislature before the election. So there was a lot of shenanigans that went on. There were a lot of people in Texas. I mean, Texas is a conservative state, red state. There was a lot of fraud going on in Texas. People were buying votes. Project Veritas, I don't know if you ever heard of them, but they are an undercover investigative journalist organization that have busted stories and filmed people undercover ballot harvesting. And so we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of ballots that are being filled out by people going around finding ballots from homeless people or getting ballots from older people that can't go to the polls, and they're getting ballots and filling them out for them. All illegal. That's illegal. It's illegal in Georgia. It's illegal in Texas. It's illegal in Alabama. This stuff goes on every election. And so I'm that I have seen the evidence. And I think our next Secretary of State is going to have to do a better job than the one that we have had. So, just look. Let me ask you this. I remember a movie where this kid said this in the movie one time. I think it was about Santa Claus, and he goes, and he, it was a Santa Claus movie that, like, oh yeah, it was with Tim Allen, and the kid says, guy says, have you ever seen Santa Claus or whatever? And he goes, yeah, and he goes, well, I haven't. And the kid goes, have you seen $1 million cash? He goes, no, but he goes, well, does that mean it doesn't exist because you haven't seen it? So you can say you haven't seen it, but if you hadn't been looking in the right places, you won't see it. And it's certainly, if you listen to the mainstream media, they're not going to tell you. That's a fact. But to act like voter fraud is not happening and election fraud is not happening across the country is, to me, sticking your head in the sand, because it's going on all the time. Because people will take money to cheat, and they'll do it whether it's voting or anything else. That is what the corruption is: taking money to do something you shouldn't do, that's immoral or illegal. And people do it all the time.
I definitely can agree with you on that. And I also can say that our election system is definitely not perfect.
No,
I can definitely agree with you on that. Our election system is not perfect.
no, no.
Um,
And anything, look, anything, look,
the, the,
there's
the only the
computers.
only problem the only problem that I have with these gubernatorial, and Senate candidates is that they're really not talking about, the really heart of what people are going through in the state of Alabama. That's the only problem that I have. Is that some people are making, issues that are pretty much non-existent, and you got some that their whole campaign is just out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, there's a bad problem with the Republican and Democrat side when it comes to campaigning to find certain hot button issues that are not really they're not really the issue, and then to blow those up and to make just to make commercials and stuff. And you're talking about 30-second commercials, 60-second commercials, and you're trying to get your base stirred up to vote for you. And there's slick marketing companies and campaigns, and that's why, look, every election season, it's almost like the commercials for both sides sound the exact same every single time. And look, I understand. I'm as frustrated. Look, I'm as frustrated with my own party as I am with the party that I'm against. And I'm against a lot of what the Democrats stand for, especially nationally, not necessarily in Alabama, but nationally. The Democrat party's moved very hard to the left. And so you're like, I understand, but both sides are guilty of not really dealing with the biggest issues, right? And just making commercials that just kind of incite people instead of here's the problem, here's the real problem, and here's how I want to fix it. So I agree with you 100%.
So we got a few more minutes here, and um, my last thing I want to talk about is of course there's certain bills that was passed by the state legislature that has to do with the LGBTQ plus community.
Mhm.
Your thoughts on that?
Well, the one I think there's really one in particular that was the one about the transgender, like for children, giving them hormone treatments or surgeries or things of that nature. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not for that. I'm glad that bill was actually passed to stop that. To me, I don't believe children need to be given hormone treatments to try to change their gender or change them, or surgeries before they're 18 years old, where they're an adult and they can make that decision on their own. Uh, I don't think they're at an age to make those decisions. We don't let them drink alcohol. We don't let them have guns when they're 12 or 13 or 14. We don't let them, we don't let them do certain things until they get a certain age. You can't drive until you're 16 and so on down the line. Why? Because they got to be mature enough to be able to make those decisions on their own, handle those decisions. So I don't think parents should be giving kids, especially kids that are still growing and maybe even not either going through puberty or haven't gone through puberty, and they're giving them hormone treatments and they're doing things like that to attempt to change their gender. I'm real firm about this. God made you either a boy or a girl. And I don't believe trying to change that is the answer. Now you get to be an adult. You're 18 years old. You're out of the house. You're on your own. I believe you can make decisions for you. You want to take hormone treatments, take them. You want to have the surgeries, you're free to take them. I just don't believe it should be done to children. And so I agree with that particular legislation. And I don't think that's an attack on the LGBT community. I think that's common sense. I think that's fair, actually. I think it's a good thing. And I think they should agree that, you know what, we need to let children mature and go to counseling. That's fine. If you need counseling and you're struggling with that, all that stuff, you need counseling, go to counseling. But to change your body, to change your hormones, to do all this stuff, You're toying with your health there, and many transgenders that even have the surgery. So, for instance, we have a man in my church that fully transitioned 12 years ago. He fully transitioned from man to woman. He had the surgeries, he was taking the hormone treatments, everything, but he was an adult. He made that decision on his own. 12 years into it, he regretted it. He was depressed. He was unhappy. He didn't like it. He didn't like the fact that he did it. And he went and had everything that he could reversed, and is now back living as a man again. And he'll tell you he had buyer's remorse. I'm going to tell you right now, children cannot work through all that at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. They're just not mature enough. So I think adults should be able to make those decisions. See, for instance, he made that decision as an adult, full adult, and he dealt with it as an adult. Hey, I'm fine. He was free to do it. And so I don't want to interfere with anybody's freedom. If they want to be homosexual or whatever, they can do that. But as an adult, they choose. Like I said, children, I know children have they get confused. They have these different feelings. Many of them that have, that we've discovered, the great, tremendous, high percentage of people, of children that have these gender confusion or gender identity issues, usually outgrow them and they're over it and as they get older. But again, I just think they need to be mature enough to make decisions that could alter their health and their bodies permanently. So I think that was a good bill.
And last but not least, and we're getting ready to close here, how can someone reach out to you? Like if they have any questions or they want to be a part of your campaign, how can they reach you?
Well, there's the two best ways, DeanOdel4Governor.com, and that's DEAN, like the dean of a school, Odel, ODLE, 4FOR.com. So Dean Odel for Governor, they can subscribe. They can actually, when they text or anything, they give a message on the website, it comes straight to my phone right here. I get it. And I try to answer everybody. I can't. I mean, sometimes it's been getting really busy lately and there's more and more people, but I still try to answer as many as I can. And also on Facebook, I do a lot of stuff on Facebook, DeanOdel4Governor.com there as well. But we're on Instagram, Twitter. But I mean, I use those, but I'm mainly our website and Facebook is mainly. And people can comment. They can hit me through Messenger there. And like I said, but if you go to the website and you subscribe or you volunteer, those things come straight to my phone like a text.
Mr. Odel, it was really a pleasure talking with you today. I understand that you had a busy day today, but nevertheless, thank you for taking the time out to be a part of this podcast.
Well, thank you. I thank you for the invitation. I thank you for the questions, great questions. And I appreciate the fact that you care enough to do a podcast and care enough about looking into all the candidates. So I appreciate that.
So just want to point out that all of our podcasts, especially when it comes to politics, we are nonpartisan. So no matter what party that candidate is, they are invited and they'll be treated the same way as anybody else. So we don't do any special favoritisms or none of that. We don't get into, any type of endorsement. And so basically, we're just here to give people a platform. We give people the information. We allow candidates to talk about where they stand. And then it'll be up to the people to decide who they want to support. So that's what we are about. We're not about party. We're about people. We're about issue. And that's what stands out us. We stand out, with other podcasts that have been floating around because I've been a part of some of them and I listen, to some of them and they're quite biased. Not here. It's whoever who wants to be on, they're welcome. And we're not about attacking people neither.
All right, that's good. Yeah, hey, you did a great job and totally fair, good commentary, good question.
Well, thank you so much. And again, this is Dean Odel. He is a Republican candidate for governor, and he just gave his contact information. If this is the gentleman that you would like to vote for, we got about 8, 9 days left here. Vote
Yeah.
for Dean Odel on May 24th if that's your candidate.
Yeah. All
Vote for
right. Yeah,
him.
May 24th. That's the first big day right there.
And last, to say to what would you like to say to the voters of Alabama?
I would say this, that whether you're Republican or Democrat, whether you're Christian or not, whether you're gay or straight, I want to guard your freedom and make sure that you're free and guard your constitutional rights. And I will do that. And that is my pledge. I will not, I want everyone to be free, a free American, a free Alabamian. And I don't want the federal government or any other agencies or any people trying to take our freedoms from us in any way.
Thank you so much. And that will conclude this edition of the Works podcast. And we have two more candidates next Sunday. One is at 2:30 Central Time, and the second one will be at 6 p.m. Central Time. So we hope that you will join us then. So until then, have a great evening.
Well, thank you so much for having me, brother.
Thank you. Have a great
All
day.
right. You too. God bless.